Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, this is from Bible.ca/Scientology. The Church of Scientology, what judges and others have said about Scientology. 1. Scientology is evil. Listen to that, LAPD. Its techniques are evil. Its practice is a serious threat to the community, medically, morally, and socially. And its adherents are sadly deluded and often mentally ill. Scientology is the world's largest organization of unqualified persons engaged in the practice of dangerous techniques which masquerade as mental therapy. Justice Anderson, Supreme Court of Victoria, Australia. 2. The government is satisfied that Scientology is socially harmful. It alienates members of families from each other and attributes squalid and disgraceful motives to all who oppose it. Its authoritarian principles and practice are a potential menace to the personality and well-being of those so deluded as to become followers. Above all, its methods can be a serious danger to the health of those who submit to them. There is no power under existing law to prohibit the practice of Scientology, but the government has concluded that it is so objectionable that it would be right to take all steps within its power to curb its growth. Kenneth Robinson, British Minister of Health. Wish we had the dates. 3. The crime committed by these defendants is of a breach in scope previously unheard of. No building, office, desk, or file was safe from their snooping and prying. No individual or organization was free from their despicable, conspiratorial minds. The tools of the trade were miniature transmitters, lockpicks, secret codes, forged credentials, and any other device they found necessary to carry out their conspiratorial schemes. Federal prosecutors' memorandum to the judge urging stiff jail sentences for 9 top leaders of Scientology who had pleaded guilty to criminal charges. Yeah, I'm pretty sure all of the people got like 5 years, and I don't know how long they actually served. Scientology is both immoral and socially obnoxious. It is corrupt, sinister, and dangerous. It is corrupt because it is based on lies and deceit and has its real objective, money and power, for Mr. Hubbard. It is sinister because it indulges in infamous practices both to its adherents who do not toe the line unquestionably and to those who criticize it or oppose it. It is dangerous because it is out to capture people and to indoctrinate and brainwash them so they become the unquestioning captives and tools of the cult, withdrawn from ordinary thought, living in relationships with others. Justice Lady ruling in the High Court of London. 4. The court record is replete with evidence that Scientology is nothing in reality but a vast enterprise to extract the maximum amount of money from its adepts. You guys know adepts is a secret society word as well, right? It can be, it's used a lot, by pseudoscientific theories and to exercise a kind of blackmail against persons who do not wish to continue with their sect. The organization clearly is schizophrenic and paranoid, and this bizarre combination seems to be a reflection of its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, Judge Breckenridge, Los Angeles Superior Court. 5. In January 1980, fearing a raid by law enforcement agencies Hubbard's representatives ordered the shedding of all documents showing that Hubbard controlled Scientology organizations, finances, personnel, or the property at Gilman Hot Springs. In a 2-week period, approximately 1 million pages were shredded, pursuant to this order. California Appellate Court, 2nd District, 3rd Division. 6. It is common knowledge among senior executives, prestigious executives of the organization, and it is the policy of CSC that members of the boards of directors are mere figureheads, without authority or control, not for internal corporate reasons, but rather to vest control in Mr. Hubbard. I have personal knowledge that in order to carry out the corporate fraud, organizational executives have engaged in the various unethical practices, including backdating phony board minutes and forging signatures. Affidavit of Jerry Armstrong, former member. That's interesting. You know, Rinder and Armstrong don't get along well. 7. When a person is subjected to coercive persuasion, as in Scientology, without his knowledge or consent, he may develop serious and sometimes irreversible physical and psychiatric disorders, up to and including schizophrenia, self-mutilation, and suicide. California Supreme Court. United States versus Lee. 8. The dispute in this case surrounds Lerma's acquisition and publication on the Internet of texts that the Church of Scientology considers sacred and protects heavily from unauthorized disclosure. Founded by L. Ron Hubbard, the Scientology religion attempts to explain the origin of negative spiritual forces in the world and advances techniques for improving one's own spiritual well-being. Scientologists believe that most human problems can be traced to lingering spirits of an extraterrestrial people massacred by their ruler Xenu over 75 million years ago. These spirits attach themselves by clusters to individuals in the contemporary world, causing spiritual harm and negatively influencing the lives of their hosts. USD, Judge Leonie Brinkema, 4 October 96 Memorandum Opinion. RTC versus Lerma. Capable of such danger that the public interest demands that people should know what is going on. Lord Denning. 9. It is an organization with medical, social, and ethical practices that are dangerous and harmful. It claims to act freely so as to draw members who subsequently undergo brainwashing by dictated ways of thinking that limit reaction capabilities. Judge Constantia Angelaki wrote in her December 1996 ruling. 10. The court record is replete with evidence that Scientology is nothing in reality but a vast enterprise to extract the maximum amount of money from its adepts by pseudoscientific theories, and to exercise a kind of blackmail against persons who do not wish to continue with their sect. In addition to violating and abusing its own members' civil rights, the organization over the years, with its fair game doctrine, has harassed and abused those persons not in Scientology, whom it perceives as enemies. The organization clearly is schizophrenic and paranoid, and this bizarre combination, we already read this. I guess I'll keep going. Oh, maybe they're re-quoting it. Seems to be a reflection of its founder, L. Ron Hubbard. The evidence portrays a man who has been virtually a pathological liar when it comes to his history, background, and achievements. The writings and documents in evidence additionally reflect his egoism, greed, avarice, lust for power, and vindictiveness, and aggressiveness against persons perceived by him to be disloyal or hostile. Judge Paul G. Breckenridge, Jr., 6/20/84, and that's from Scientology versus Armstrong. I just want to add, too, anyone completely embracing all these policies and doing all the fair gaming, they're mirroring Hubbard. It's just an evil, dark energy. Diabolical magic. 11. It is an organization with medical, social, and ethical practices that are dangerous and harmful. In some countries, this organization presents itself as religion, Church of Scientology in Greece, however, as Center of Applied Philosophy, KEPHI. There is no, as results from foreign court decisions and press articles, a presentation of Scientology in the world with uniform directions and similar goals. That should tell anyone anything, right? It sometimes appears under the cover of religious movement in order to receive a constitutional protection and enjoy the advantages of religion, such as tax and currency easing. The Center of Applied Philosophy operates under the cover of Philosophic Association. It does not have religious character, as its BOD president stated in the 8.695 document to the Holy Synod of the Orthodox Church of Greece, signed by then BOD president, mentioning that it is not a religion. However, since 1995, it arbitrarily and in a way contrary to the public morals started declaring that it is a religion in order to present itself persecuted because of its members' religious beliefs. Judge Constantia Angelaki, December 1996. 12. The members are praised in writing for conducting unethical or criminal actions. The most important, however, is that the center is maintaining a Department of Special Affairs, an Office of Special Affairs, which conduct, isn't that where Rinder was? Which conduct monitoring of people and report their movements to unidentified centers abroad. Judge Ioannis Angelis, October 1995, raid on Scientology Center in Greece. 13. She is especially praised because she managed to bring to Keefe the KIP report and consequently offered to the International Administration a vital product which considerably contributes in handling the suppressive elements in Greece and abroad. That's dated February 23, 1993. 14. L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, has been quoted as looking upon law as a tool to harass and discourage rather than to win. The law can be used very easily to harass, and enough harassment on somebody who is simply on the thin edge anyway, well knowing that he is not authorized, will generally be sufficient to cause his professional decease. If possible, of course, ruin him utterly. That's in one of the policies. And that was from Judge Brinkema, U.S. Eastern Virginia District Court, dated November 28, 95. That was RTC versus Lerma. 15. The individuousness of the alleged conspiracy is best reflected in the fact that plaintiff was sued 21 times over the course of a 17-month period in jurisdictions ranging from New York to California. We hold that plaintiff has sufficiently alleged the elements of the tort of malicious prosecution, and for purposes of this case, the tort of civil conspiracy to commit malicious prosecution. Chief Justice Freeman, Illinois Supreme Court, dated September 18, 1997. And that was Cult Awareness Network versus Church of Scientology. 16. In reality, the church is a hugely profitable global racket that survives by intimidating members and critics in a mafia-like manner. 11 top Scientologists, including Hubbard's wife, were sent to prison in the early 1980s for infiltrating, burglarizing, and wiretapping more than 100 private and government agencies in attempts to block their investigations. Scientology has brought hundreds of suits against its perceived enemies, and today pays an estimated $20 million annually to more than 100 lawyers. One legal goal of Scientology is to bankrupt the opposition or bury it under paper. The church has 71 active lawsuits against the IRS alone. In my opinion, the church is one of the most effective intelligence operations in the U.S., rivaling even that of the FBI. Oh, Ted Gunderson. Ted Gunderson, a former head of the FBI's Los Angeles office. Ted Gunderson, he revealed a lot. I still to this day don't know if he was controlled, but he did reveal a lot. 17. Foreign governments have been moving even more vigorously against the organization. In Canada, the church and 9 of its members will be tried in June on charges of stealing government documents. Since 1986, authorities in France, Spain, and Italy have raided more than 50 Scientology centers, pending charges against more than 100 of its overseas church members include fraud, extortion, capital flight, coercion, illegally practicing medicine, and taking advantage of mentally incapacitated people. In Germany last month, leading politicians accused the cult of trying to infiltrate a major party, as well as launching an immense recruitment drive in the East. Oh, wouldn't that be vulnerable enough for them? They were trying to target the East Germans. And this comes from the Time magazine article. The thriving cult of greed and power. 18. Convictions, seized church documents, and defectors' affidavits demonstrate that Scientologists have already indulged in burglary, kidnapping, false imprisonment, espionage, blackmail, and conspiracies to steal government documents and to obstruct justice. It's from Reader's Digest. No mention of child abuse. 19. He is a fraud and has always been a fraud. My father has always used the confidential information extracted from people during confessionals to intimidate, threaten, and coerce them to do what he wanted, which often meant getting them to give him money. My father routinely used false threats and information from confessionals, particularly about crimes people had committed, to extort money from them. My father has always held out Scientology and auditing to be based purely on science and not on religious belief or faith. We regularly promised and distributed publications with scientific guarantees. This was and has always been common practice. My father and I created a religious front only for tax purposes and legal protection from fraud claims. Isn't that interesting? We almost always told nearly everyone that Scientology was really science, not a religion, but that the religion front was created to deal with the government. Ronald D. Wolf, also known as L. Ron Hubbard Jr., son of L. Ron Hubbard. Affidavit in Shake versus Church of Scientology. All this documentation on record, but yet they're still going. Abusing kids. 20. Mr. Hubbard showed up for the divorce proceedings in Port Orchard, Washington. He had another woman with him that he was supposed to have married during 1946. Mrs. Oakes produced 2 old newspaper articles which gave an account of the divorce proceedings of the second wife. The articles in the Mirror, Los Angeles, California paper, dated April 23, 1951, page 12, and the Los Angeles Times, April 24, 1951, related how Mrs. Sarah Northrop Hubbard from a Pasadena family was kidnapped. had her child, Alexis Valerie, 13-month-old daughter, taken from her by Hubbard, and was asking for a divorce. FBI report of interview with Margaret Oakes, first wife of L. Ron Hubbard. Inspector W. Beale Grove, Philadelphia District, February 20, 1963. Office documents prove that L. Ron Hubbard was in fact guilty of bigamy. Yep. Bigamy, fraud, 21. L. Ron Hubbard once spoke about his strategies for handling his enemies. The best way was to literally drive them crazy, like Mills and Lisa McPherson, to use all one's resources to find their weaknesses and hit them hardest where it hurt the most. He said there were few men in history who mastered the techniques to do so successfully. He intimated he was one. Isn't that great? That's what diabolical magic does. A Hubbard Bulletin, 5 November 1967. Critics of Scientology states, never discuss Scientology with the critic. Just discuss his or her crimes, known and unknown, and act completely confident that those crimes exist. 22, Hubbard Policy of 25 February 1966. Attacks on Scientology states, Scientology must respond to attacks by attacking the attackers, only never agree to an investigation of Scientology. LAPD, check it out. LAPD, Scientology doesn't think you can investigate them. Only agree to an investigation of the attackers. This is the correct procedure. 1. Spot who is attacking us. 2. Start investigating them promptly for felonies or worse, using our own professionals, not outside agencies. 4. Start feeding lurid blood, sex, crime, actual evidence on the attackers to the press. Don't ever tamely submit to an investigation of us. Make it tough, rough on attackers, all the way. Sound like a religion? 23. Because of the continual refusal to cooperate, Lynn Froylan was rapidly assigned to the RPF's RPF. This was several steps down from the RPF, in the boiler room under the Fort Harrison Hotel building. And you guys think that Clearwater PD doesn't know? Come on. It was a dark, filthy, smelly place where the huge boilers roared and clanked day and night, and where the rats lived. Lynn was chained to a pipe down there for weeks, under guard. How many accounts of this do we have? It's very satanic in nature. She was taking meals and allowed toilet breaks, but no other hygiene. I tried desperately to get her to repent and get out of the hole, but she would not. The longer she stayed in the hole, the less she spoke, and the more unwilling, sullen, filthy, and feral-looking she became. That's Hannah Eltringham Whitfield. That was her declaration. April 4th, 1994. It's a death number right there. Declaration in Church of Scientologies. Fishman and Gertz. 24. On May 19th, what happened to the judge's statements? I don't see these being all judge statements. I think some of these are affidavits. On May 19th, 1973, a New York journalist, Paulette Cooper, was indicted before a federal grand jury on charges of sending BOMB threats to the Church of Scientology. In October 1973, in a legal move born of despair, Miss Cooper agreed to take a truth serum test to prove her innocence. It worked, and the state shelved the charges. 4 years later, Miss Cooper was telephoned at her Manhattan apartment by the FBI. They had seized documents from the Church of Scientology and had learned that she had been framed by the sect over the BOMB threats and had been victim of a carefully planned operation aimed at driving her insane or having her gaoled. Miss Cooper qualified as a target of Scientology's dirty tricks operations because she had been an uncompromising critic of Scientology since December 1969, when her first article on the followers of L. Ron Hubbard was published by a British woman's magazine. The holder of a master's degree in psychology, Miss Cooper had written a book about the sect, The Scandal of Scientology, published in 1971. The seized Scientology documents show that in the course of their campaign of vilification against Miss Cooper, the Scientologists, 1. Framed her on the BOMB threat charges, stealing stationery from her apartment to forge the threatening letter. 2. Sued her 14 times, at one stage themselves importing copies of her book to the UK to take advantage of Britain's notoriously tough libel laws. 3. Put her name on pornographic mailing lists. 4. Stole a legal note from her lawyer to gain an advantage in litigation. 5. Made spurious allegations to the Internal Revenue Service about her father's tax affairs. 6. Sent agents to befriend her, date her, and spy on her. 7. Wrote graffiti in public places, giving her telephone number and address. John Forte, former British Vice Consul in Corfu, in book, The Commodore and the Colonials, and the Colonels. 25. For most of the mission holders, it was their first glimpse of David Miscavige security guards. David Miscavige. Security guards never left his side during the evening. Apart from introducing each speaker, he had little to say to the audience. He merely warned them what would happen to anyone who turned against Scientology. So openly threatening, no big deal, right? That person's future is black. It is so black, I can't even describe it right now. Who was working with a Miscavige during that time? Hint, hint. I can't even find the words to describe how black that person's future is. Isn't that Tommy Cruise's best friend there? I mean, it is really black. Within a few days, some of them found out exactly what he meant. 18 were taken out to the Scientology prison camp at Happy Valley, where they joined David Mayo, who had been there since the summer. They were kept for several months before being released. Transcript of 1982 Mission Holder Conference. Entered as evidence. In July 1984. Child custody case. Before Justice Lady. 26. For 25 years, IRS agents had branded Scientology a commercial enterprise and refused to give it the tax exemption granted to churches. The refusals had been upheld in every court. Scientology's attorneys hired private investigators to dig into the private lives of the IRS officials and to conduct surveillance operations to uncover potential vulnerabilities. It reminds me of what's going on with those PIs that were harassing the YouTube influencers. In October 1993, the IRS announced that it was issuing 30 exemption letters covering about 150 Scientology churches, missions, and corporations. There's something real, till this day, that's a very fishy story to me. All of this stuff. There's no reason that anyone should intimidate a government. So I don't buy it 100%. I just don't. It's an inside job. It was a very surprising decision, said Lawrence B. Gibbs, the IRS commissioner from 1986. Yeah, because it's illegal. To 1989. To allow any organization to threaten and intimidate the government. I mean, come on, you guys. Wakey, wakey. In Goldberg's predecessor, where you have as much litigation over as much time with the general uniformity of results that the service had with Scientology, it is surprising to have the ultimate decision be favorable. It was even more surprising. Yeah, because it's all crooked. That the service made the decision without full disclosure in light of the prior background. At one time, the church and its members had more than 50 lawsuits pending against the IRS and its officials. I just have a question. Is that like, I'm not a legal expert at all, but isn't that like illegal to threaten and sue government officials? I mean, when you're in the military, you cannot sue the Army or the Navy or anything. Gotta wake up, man. It's time to wake up. 27. I also witnessed a 14-year-old boy. Isn't that great, you guys? 14-year-old boy being locked up in the chain locker of the ship, where he was made to spend the night. The chain locker is a small dark space where the chain to the anchor to the ship is stored when the ship is not at anchor. I witnessed this happening several times to people. Hubbard claimed that the RPF was an act of benevolence on his part, sick, to rehabilitate psychotic criminals. Actually, in my opinion and experience, the RPF was a prison camp. Document written by Monica Pignotti. Oh, I just covered her. That was September 26, 89. The 4-year-old boy could no longer cry. He had been nearly 40 hours in the chain locker of the flagship Apollo. What kind of people do this to a 4-year-old child? He had been nearly 40 hours in the chain locker of the flagship Apollo. That's why we need the names of the people that were on that boat. Ship, whatever. And his entire body was aching from his efforts to chip off rust. His knees and hands were raw with cuts and bruises. What kind of parents allow this? His voice was raspy from crying, and he was desperately afraid. He was constantly making resolutions to never, never again eat the Commodore's telexes. Oh my God, you guys. That shows how hungry he was. You guys know what a telex is? It's kind of like a fax paper. Monsters, you guys. The most recent crime of which he had been accused. Little Tony had entered the chain locker through the tiny manhole that led to it. The metallic sound as the lid slammed shut sounded final somehow. The space was cramped for even his small body, and he was enveloped by darkness. It was wet in there and very, very scary. This is very satanic in nature. So I'm adding that. The chains of the ship's anchor took on the dimensions of a monster. At one point, a rat scuttled by him, squealing. He was sure he was going to die. Tonya Burden claims that she saw people placed in the chain lockers on a number of occasions at the direct orders of Hubbard. Tonya wrote in a legal affidavit, years after leaving the Sea York, I saw one boy being held in there for 30 nights, crying and begging to be released. This is trauma. This is intentional trauma. He was only allowed out to clean the bilges, where the sewage and refuse of the ship collected. What kind of adults would allow that to go on? You know what I mean? All on record. 28. Ron Jr. states in a sworn affidavit, I have personal knowledge that my father regularly used illegal drugs. I've been saying. Including amphetamines, barbiturates, and hallucinogens. He regularly used cocaine, peyote, and mescaline, according to statements made by attorney Michael Flynn. Hubbard, until at least February of 1980, filled out fraudulent doctors' prescriptions for a large array of medical drugs for himself. Sarah Hubbard explained that Hubbard was self-medicated, but that during the 5 years they were married, she knew of no instances where he used street drugs. Right. Armstrong told me, among other things, of a letter from Hubbard to his third wife, Mary Sue when Hubbard was in Las Palmas during 1967 at the inception of the Sea Org. This letter is now in the custody of the court. In it, Hubbard tells his wife, "I'm drinking lots of rum and popping pinks and grays." John McMasters told me that on the flagship Apollo in the late 60s, he witnessed Hubbard's drug supply. It was the largest drug chest I had ever seen. He had everything. It was shown in the Armstrong trial in Los Angeles in 1984 that Hubbard even had blank prescription slips from the U.S. Navy, one of which had a prescription for phenobarbital, a barbiturate and hypnotic, written in Hubbard's handwriting. Also in the Armstrong trial, where the affirmations, handwritten essays by Hubbard were introduced. A letter by Hubbard to his first wife was revealed, the last sentence of which declared, "I do love you, even if I used to be an opium addict." Bent Cordoin, former mission owner, in his book, Messiah or Madman. 29. Scientology is being planned on religious organization basis throughout the world. This will not upset in any way the usual activities of any organization. It is entirely a matter for accountants and solicitors. L. Ron Hubbard, 1970. 30. I'd like to start a religion. That's where the money is. L. Ron Hubbard to Lloyd Esbach in 1949. Quoted by Esbach in Over My Shoulder. So that's it, you guys. I will leave a link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.